Hello again. I'm Joe Walensky, and I'm the conference director for Convey UX. And we have our next event coming up the last 3 days of February, and it's going to be in person in Seattle and online. And one of the fun things I get to do is talk to the many speakers that will be at the event. And today I am pleased to be speaking with Luke Wroblewski. Hello, Luke. How are you today?
I am doing quite well. Hello, hello.
Well, I'm talking from a home office in Bellingham, Washington, which is just north of Blink's headquarters in Seattle. Where are you talking to us from?
I am in Palo Alto, California, just about 30 minutes away from my home in Los Gatos. But Bellington would be a great destination for some mountain biking, so we'll have to make that happen one day.
Well, yeah, it certainly is, and I enjoy taking advantage of kayaking around here and hiking and the biking as well. So you're definitely right about that. Well, yeah, I've been fortunate to have known you for quite a long time. One of the things I'm able to appreciate from a distance of your work is that you're very prolific in your sharing of ideas, talking at events, but also the books that you've written, and regularly contributing, online articles on a regular basis. I haven't been as caught up with you recently, but for people that may not be as familiar with you as I am, why don't you talk a little bit about your background, some highlights of that, and talk about what you're up to now?
Yeah, these days I feel a little like a dinosaur because when I talk about like how I got started and all this stuff, it was in the mid 90s when I was working at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. And the big project over there was NCSA Mosaic, which turned out to be the first widely distributed graphical web browser. It turned into Internet Explorer, Netscape Navigator, and then away we go. Right. So back then I was building products for research scientists because that's what the web was for. And from there, went over to eBay, went over and spent time at Yahoo, kind of got to live the whole web rush, Web 2.0 rush, mobile. And then went and did a couple startups, sold one to Twitter, sold one to Google, then hung out at Google for a good number of years. And now I'm kind of back building new things, but building companies as opposed to just products. So I work at a firm called Sutter Hill Ventures, and we do a whole bunch of incubations of companies where we'll start them out from zero and try to get them to grow all the way up to becoming big, great companies. And so it's kind of what I've been doing all along, but yet in a different context, which is fun. It's nice to change from academia at NCSA to growing internet companies during the boom to startups to this.
Well, you did a surprisingly brief encapsulation of what I know is quite a bit of work over your career to this time. So good on you with that. But there's definitely a lot packed in there that we didn't have time to get to. But let's talk about the topic that you'll be presenting at the conference. So the title is "How AI Ate My Website." So why don't you tell us a little bit about how that topic came about and what we can expect to learn from it?
Yeah, well, maybe that's why I was brief in the first part, so I can sort of tie this part into that. As I mentioned, I've kind of gone through, hey, let's get everything on the internet, and then let's get everything on the mobile, let's get everything on the cloud. And I don't think it's any surprise to people that nowadays the chatter is all about let's make everything AI. And so what I did in the past around all those other, people will call them like platform transitions or what have you in computing, but when really dramatic new capabilities came around, there's a process of learning what they can do and should do and how they should do it, which I find super fun and interesting. I'm this type of person who always wants to be learning. So what better way to learn than to try and hit the reset button multiple times? And you start to see similar patterns, right? So when the web came around, everybody was trying to pour desktop apps to the web. And then when mobile came around, everybody's trying to port websites to mobile, and this pattern just repeats over and over again. So in the early stages, when these things, these platform potentials come out, there's this tendency to just repeat and rehash and try and port. And you don't really get to see the true potential of stuff unless you dig into it, start playing with it, try to build things, try to design things. And that's when I feel like you get opened up to the new ideas. It doesn't happen instantly, right? And there's no guarantee that that happens. But being in the thick of it is where I find those opportunities kind of show up for me. And to come back again to some of the early intro stuff, that's why I do all the writing you described at the beginning, to kind of think through this stuff. Half of that is just discipline in making myself understand things and then write it down. And since I'm already writing it down, I might as well share it. And if I share it, maybe somebody sees it and asks me a question or points me at something different that expands my learning. And so I've been doing the same kind of thing with this AI transition now. There's also the benefit that I'm no longer Google and I can do a lot more public stuff than I was doing before. But that's the process I've been going through, is just getting inside of this technology, trying to build things with it, trying to understand what it does, how it does it. And then when I learn things, putting them out there in the shape of articles, talks like we'll be doing in February, and other formats. So the talk, there's a long-winded wind up to the talk description, but since I cut the other thing short, the topic is, I have over these years built up 2,000 articles, 3 books, like 370 presentations, hundreds of videos. And so all that stuff sits on my website, like it sits on so many other websites on the internet, right? And if you want to find some information from me or from anyone else, what can you do? You can like type keywords and hope something comes up. That's easier to do when the entirety of the internet is your canvas. When you're on a specific site, it's a little bit more hit or miss. You can browse stuff. Maybe it's here, maybe it's here, maybe it's there. And you can kind of make your way through and try to read and understand what's going on. And the other thing that you can do in real life is you can say, hey, Luke, what do you think about NCSA Mosaic's design, right? And I would think about what I know about it, process some thoughts, and respond to you. And with some of the AI models and the generative technology we have right now, we can actually get pretty damn close to that last modality, right? So what I did, this has been almost a year ago now, is I just sort of spent a bunch of time playing with these models, working with a few folks to ingest all that content on my website, do a bunch of processes to break it down, to make it more recompilable by large language models and segmentation models and all kinds of different models, and then recombine it when people ask questions. And so the talk is really just an overview of that process, both from a why did we make the interface design decisions that we made, but also why did we do this? How did we do it? I don't go too deep technically, but I talk enough about the technical stuff for you to kind of peel back the covers and get a sense of how some of these technologies work and why. And then I also walk through a couple experiments and changes and what we learned from it, what have you. Yeah, so hopefully that's a good description of the talk.
Well, yeah, what you're describing there, where you're able to take your own work or a certain repository and then build up an AI version of it using a lot of freely and relatively inexpensive tools. I think that's really something that to me is extremely interesting and valuable in and of itself. Just the idea that it doesn't necessarily require a huge organization to develop this. So, the fact that you did that for yourself is interesting at one level, but it also means that it's possible for people all over the world to do it.
Well, I had help, to be clear, right? It's not all me. But yeah, certainly not a large organization. We're talking like 2 to 3 people tops. And so, yeah, it's doable. And I think over time, it'll probably get even easier, right? As more and more people go through this process. And this is the same thing, right? When you first tried to deploy a web page in the 90s, like, what the heck is going on? Now you can just open
Mm,
up your phone, right? And push a button and you have a web page. Or you can even just talk and say, I want a web page that's this, and out it pops. So
mm,
there's definitely this curve, right, where things become more and more accessible. But what those end products end up looking like is often shaped by what happens in the early stages, which is also why I really want to get involved in the early stages, because that's where a lot of decisions get made that later everybody has to live with,
mhm.
right? And so, yeah.
And it's probably, if I wouldn't be surprised if the term AI ended up being the most common new word of 2023 or something like that. I mean, you're certainly in a great position where you see startup companies getting involved in that technology, ones that you work with as well as ones that just surround you. I think one of the things people, maybe outside of that are wondering is how, how do you really know like what is probably going to be relevant, what is something that is maybe ending up being something that doesn't come to fruition. How are you kind of positioning yourself and your strategy right now with respect to AI?
Yeah, well, I think it's like every other kind of wave of technology, right? I mean, you can see the waves off the shore, you know they're coming in, you know they're going to break and hit the water. But if you want to surf one of them, you either have to be there, you have to be there right in time. You can't be too early and you can't be too late. And that is non-trivial, right? So I think the big picture, will our interactions with computers be changed significantly by the advances in AI? Absolutely. Like it's already obvious and it's going to happen. How exactly that pans out, when it pans out, and who kind of defines what that looks like, to be determined, right? If anybody knew that, then it wouldn't be fun, A, and B, like they basically have a crystal ball in the future and they could probably answer even more interesting questions than that. But I think that, that's the part that's kind of fun, is trying to get that timing right so that you can ride those waves. And that's the magic of surfing, is actually being on the wave, not having them smash over you or what have you.
Well, you've certainly, always been in that mindset. Your book on mobile first, I think, was one that helped a lot of people to change their thoughts about converting desktop software into mobile apps, and your approach just completely, went from mobile as the start of that. So I imagine those same types of I don't know, new kind of thinking applies here as well.
Similar patterns, right? I mean, if I told you how many times I heard people tell me back then, oh, nobody's ever going to do blank on mobile, right? And like now, the opposite is true, right? People are like, oh, nobody's not going to do that on mobile. So things change. And at the time, it was the same sort of thing. You could see that mobile was going to become a really big and important thing, in the like early mid-ish 2000s. But exactly how it was all going to play out, who knows? But then again, that's the fun part, right? That's the ride, and that's the thing that you get to enjoy and be part of if you get in there early enough, as opposed to too late.
Well, at the conference, we have a lot of very experienced practitioners, but we also have new people that are, coming into the profession. I mean, if you think back on your own career, when you were just leaving the University of Illinois after working with Mosaic, you probably had no idea you end up or have the career path you had here. Are there any thoughts that you might want to share just about maybe your journey or how it developed that you think might help others that are just getting started?
Yeah, I mean, if I look back at it now, I would say the fact that I was always interested in learning and kind of sharing what I learned and using that as this feedback loop was probably a big part of what moved me from one thing to the next thing. Even now, like just the call before this one, I was talking to a digital artist that I discovered on the internet who's doing super interesting things with 3D and AI, and I just reached out to him. We had a conversation. I learned a ton of stuff. All right, so I think that simple process can really take you pretty far, right? If there's something you're curious about, take the step to learn about it. And you'll be surprised how many people are interested in teaching you and the amount of stuff that you can get from it that then takes you to the next thing.
Well, thanks for taking the time to share your thoughts about your topic and other things, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of months in Seattle.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Bye bye.